Good horror anime is rare in the anime medium, and that's because it's difficult to make stylized animation scary. That's where Higurashi no Naku Koroni stands out as one of the few adaptations that managed to pull it off. In this era of frequent reboots, remakes, and long-awaited sequels, many times bringing back an old franchise can feel like nothing more than a cash grab rather than something that's genuinely necessary, which often leaves us asking ourselves, how are they going to screw this up? When the new anime project for Higurashi When They Cry was announced, I sort of wasn't too excited at the prospect of seeing a remake of it. It just didn't feel like it aired that long ago. It was also an anime that I vaguely remembered, and that's admittedly because I only watched it once while it was airing. So while I didn't remember what happened in it, what I do remember is being on my first forum, where we would break down each episode every week and try to piece together what exactly was going on. Most of us found Higurashi to be extremely creepy, unsettling, and most of all, baffling. But that's what made it fun. Its merciless lack of answers. So many questions led us to come up with so many theories left and right, while looking towards the sound novel veterans to chime in, and they would just be like, oh, just you wait. Just you wait. However, for some reason, once the series ended, I forgot all about it. Maybe it was because I got all my questions answered, or maybe because I had dropped off from the community midway through. But whatever the reason, now it was coming back, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't going to check it out regardless. So as I watched episode 1, I was amazed at how eerily familiar everything felt. From hearing the same voice actors and actresses perform their characters' oddly reminiscent mannerisms, to seeing scenes that play out so similarly even though they were clearly angled differently, it felt like the show never left. So aside from a few minor directional changes here and there and its shiny new facelift, once we were hit with the old opening at the end, I was successfully transported back to 2006. I was fucking ready. Did this mean I was now going to be the veteran telling new fans experiencing Higurashi for the first time, oh, just you wait? As episode 2 would have it, nope. Episode 2 changed everything, in more ways than one. In the first few minutes, it dropped a hammer that recontextualized all of episode 1 for me. By presenting us a character that's so pivotal to the endgame of Higurashi right towards the beginning, at first seemed unexpected and a bit concerning. However, once we hear Rika talking about having won and gotten her happy ending before, that's when it really hit me. This wasn't some botched remake, this was a sequel. I was mind blown, and also really confused. But that in itself was exciting, because the joy of watching Higurashi back then was the conversation it created among viewers trying to piece it all together, the conversation it created among us. Here, the new series isn't remaking the old one, but rather it's remaking that experience. How exactly is it doing that? Well, for starters, having the new arcs being almost identical to the original Higurashi question arcs, save for a few minor and a couple of major deviations, new fans can pretty much get away with watching the new series without having watched what came before, and old fans are able to experience something new while still being packaged the same way. It gives them new mysteries to contend with as they're able to share their knowledge of the previous series with newer fans and try to piece it all together with the community. And hey, it's still early on, it's quite possible that this sequel won't be a worthy successor to the 2006 anime, just like the anime might have failed to capture the gloriousness of the 2002 sound novel. But that was all Higurashi back then. What is Higurashi trying to do now? As of the writing of this video, only 5 episodes of Higurashi have aired, with the second arc, Watadamashi, having just started. So I won't really seek to answer what's going on, but rather to explore what Higurashi is using to craft this new, yet similar experience. And that's deception. I'm sure you've noticed that the 2 arcs that have been shown so far, Onidamashi and Watadamashi, have the word deception in their names, because they're masquerading as the question arcs from the original series, Onikakushi and Watanagashi. Rika, a character who clearly has more knowledge about what's going on and how to stop it, is deceived into giving the wrong solution, such as in episode 4 with Keiichi. And then from a meta perspective, the series' biggest deception is in how it was packaged. With its first episode, it purposely led us old fans to believe it was a remake, only to pull the rug from under us in a big way right at the start of episode 2. This is clear if you take a look back at episode 1 and how it was being set up. After the violent opening scene, it shows Keiichi waking up in his room, followed by Rena, Mion, and Rika each in their respective houses. This is set up to make Rika's scene seem a little more subtle and more like a passing nod to old fans who know the truth that this is foreshadowing. Throughout the episode, we keep getting repeated emphasis on the calendar dates, which is not in the original. This can easily be dismissed as an aesthetic choice and a way to more easily leave more hints for newcomers, but by playing the old opening at the end, it lulled us old fans into a false sense of security that everything was going to play out the same. However, with the after-credit scene of Rika, in hindsight, the old opening served as more of a bookend to what came before to signal that episode 2 was where it was really going to start to depart. This new series likes to weave in subtle deviations to the story, whether in character interactions or in the order of its events, in order to play with the seasoned viewer's expectations. Similar to how Higurashi likes to build up its carefree slice-of-life moments in order to contrast them with its sudden twists of brutal horror, this new series is purposely trying to mislead in order to blur the lines of what's real and what's not, creating much of the ambiguity we saw at the conclusion of the Onidamashi arc on episode 4. But before I get into what happened there, I need to point out that the other central theme at play here, which, going by the title, Higurashi Go, has to do with karma, with Go meaning something along those lines. As this series is trying to be both a sequel and a remake, it really wants to use what came before to create something new. Because of that, all of the characters are linked to their past lives. The word karma originates from Hinduism and Buddhism, which are religions that believe in reincarnation and how your actions in your current life dictate what you get in the next. However, these characters aren't really reincarnating because they're in the same bodies, so it's more like a reset or a parallel version of themselves. The idea is that the characters in this series are going to be paying for their previous sins in their past lives. For example, Keiichi's sin in the original Onikakushi was not believing in his friends, and as we saw in episode 4, he had to pay that price, even if he started to believe in them now. I suspect that the person that will need to pay the most is Rika, seeing as this new series has brought her much more focus than she had in the original. Her sin might have been her resignation in her previous lives. She gave up on trying to fight fate, and now this predicament will force her to try to intervene, and each time I believe she will fail, as she did with Keiichi in this arc. Hence why we see her desperately running in the new opening trying to find a way out. Now, I've kept alluding to it, but it's time I finally talk about it. As expected, episode 4 is where the arc deviated the most. It felt so ambiguous and surreal that I imagined it left old and new fans baffled. I know I was. It was very over the top, and that could have been because of what some have pointed out to be the silly character expressions, but for me, I just wasn't sure if Keiichi was actually seeing what we were being shown. It became difficult to even trust his point of view, because if we just take what happened at face value, there's just some things that don't add up. How is Keiichi able to move with an obscene amount of stab wounds, still have the energy to bash Rena's head in, and survive? If he had organ damage, there's no way 2 days would have been enough time to recover. And then, how were Rika and Satoko killed the next day with the same kitchen knife? And why did he let out a scream when he scratched his neck at the end when there was clearly no wound? If Keiichi was in fact stabbed multiple times by Rena and everything played out as we saw, it would fit in well with the theme about him getting his karma. It would just mean that she most likely missed hitting any of his vitals, hence why he was still able to move and recover so quickly in the hospital. However, that would leave so many other questions up in the air. Therefore, my alternate scenario would be that certain parts were real and certain parts were imagined, fitting in with the deception theme. Rena was undoubtedly crazy and tried to kill Keiichi, but she died instantly when she fell and hit her head on the table. Keiichi proceeded to hallucinate the rest, took the same knife, and went to kill Rika and Satoko with it. This was followed by him clawing out his throat and bleeding out. Now, the troubling part about the scenario would be the timeline, since it says Rika and Satoko were killed the day after the incident with Rena. However, when he spoke to his mother on the phone the night of Rena's visit, she told him that they wouldn't be back until the next day in the evening, giving him ample time to kill Satoko and Rika. Once he did that, he went back home or lost his consciousness at the scene due to his neck wounds. This is why he wakes up in the hospital 2 days later with a collar around his neck, and everyone is hesitant to give him a direct answer. Keiichi realizes this in the hospital as he goes to scratch his neck, and the realization makes him let out a scream in horror, bringing the arc to its conclusion. Now, if I actually got that right, that would probably be too easy. There's a number of interesting theories that I've seen about this, but I won't get into them because the point is that none of us really know what's going to happen next. Even those of us that have an edge. We're just all along for the ride. What's great about this is that we get to experience and relive the same story with the same characters, but in a new light. It's like playing a game of Among Us. Even though your friend was the imposter the past 6 games back to back, you still don't know for sure if he's the imposter this time. The fun is in sussing him out with your friends and making sure he gets his karma. You little piece of... I've actually been seeing this trend of remakes that aren't really remakes with a few franchises coming out recently. And I think that's a really interesting way of doing it because it captures that nostalgia while having its eye on the future. Instead of being an empty sequel that just seeks to recreate what came before, this is an attempt to use what came before in order to evolve the franchise with its fans. Sort of like digging up a time capsule. You get to see how you used to be back then and compare it to how you are now. Unlike us, media, once it's finished, doesn't really change. It kind of just stays the same. So this is sort of a chance to bring it up to speed with us. And I'm sure it gives the creators a way to challenge themselves and have the chance to add what they've learned over the years. It's a fresh way to bring back a franchise while bringing in new fans. And if you disagree, that's fine, but either way, in a time of isolation, any opportunity that can bring us together and get our minds off our current worldly predicament is more than welcome. Just being able to watch something together, to discuss it, and to have fun theorizing what happens next is the best way to keep us connected and looking forward, even if the show in question is all about the opposite. Anyways, that's it from me. Do you think the new Higurashi should have just been a true remake? Or what about episode 4? What do you actually think happened with Keiichi? Let me know all of this in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, and if you want to see more like this one, make sure to subscribe. Besides that, I'm OniMaru, and... 怖くないですよ。僕が優しく